We scroll past the lights, the record deals, the gallery walls, and think, must be nice. The crowd roars your name, the critics call you a genius, the algorithm can't get enough, and still your hands shake. That's the joke nobody prints on the poster. The same sensitivity that writes the song the world sings back at you also makes every hiss of feedback feel like a blade. Today we're talking about how creative success, real, life-altering, can't-buy groceries without being recognized success, can quietly break the people who earn it. Section 1. The Sensitive Engine. Let's clear the air first. Most artists were once kids who felt too much. They heard the things nobody said out loud, tasted colors, got stomach aches from strangers' moods. That overtuned radar is the engine. It spots what everyone else misses, turns it into melody, pigment, plot. Problem is, there's no off switch. When an audience of millions starts pulling apart your lyrics or your brushstroke, the raw nerve that used to help you in a bedroom studio is suddenly wired to the entire internet. Kurt Cobain was that kid. At 19, he could spin feedback into confessionals. At 24, he was reading his diary to stadiums. Same diary that said, "I'm so tired I can't sleep." The applause didn't soothe the fatigue. It cranked it up, because now exhaustion felt like ingratitude. The sensitivity that wrote all apologies couldn't filter out every YouTube comment guessing how he'd die. When you're porous, the poison slips in with the praise. Creative industries love a simple equation. Attention equals money. It's the logic of the attention economy, where every click is currency. For executives, this transforms the messy act of creation into a predictable business model. Art becomes data, an audience becomes a market, and a song becomes an asset tracked on charts and revenue projections. Once the audience shows up, a profound shift occurs. The artist recedes. You stop being a person and start being a pipeline. At first, the validation is intoxicating, but soon the demand changes. The industry doesn't just want more of your art, they want a specific marketable version of you. Your identity gets packaged and replicated until the person is obscured by the brand. Suddenly, every action is weighed for its commercial potential. Your next track, your next tweet, your next paparazzi shot, all have to move product. The machine demands constant feeding, a relentless stream of content to keep the pipeline flowing. The authentic impulse to create is replaced by the strategic obligation to produce. Your life becomes a 24/7 performance, and this system is brutally indifferent to the human cost. Spreadsheets don't care you haven't slept in 2 days, they care you missed the release date. They don't register burnout, only a dip in engagement. The very humanity that made your art resonate becomes an inconvenience. Your well-being is secondary to the schedule. Your mental health, a risk factor on a balance sheet. Amy Winehouse felt that whiplash in real time. Back to Black turned her into a global brand overnight, and the brand wanted the messy heartbreak persona she'd only meant as reportage. She was turning personal pain into universal art, a work of staggering honesty. But the world didn't just hear an album, it saw a character. The art was a snapshot of a painful period. The industry demanded it become her entire identity. The media frenzy was relentless. Every late-night photo reinforced the myth the label was selling, and the myth started eating the woman. Instead of being seen as a person in crisis, she was seen as living up to her brand. Her real suffering was flattened into a caricature for public consumption. The paparazzi's flashbulbs didn't just capture images. They built a cage, trapping her in the very pain that fueled her art. Behind the scenes, she told friends she wanted to make jazz records, grow old, disappear. She longed to return to the music itself, the simple act of creation that had been her refuge before it became her prison. She was a musician who loved Sarah Vaughan, not the tragic caricature she was forced to play. But the machine has no ears for such desires. It only understands momentum and profit. It doesn't hear the plea for rest, it hears the market's demand. The machine answered by booking another tour, another string of dates on an endless highway, another set of expectations. The tour bus becomes a conveyor belt. When creativity becomes labor under fluorescent deadlines, the soul that once handed out its secrets for free starts charging over time it can't cash. It's a debt paid not in money, but in burnout, cynicism, and a spiritual bankruptcy that no commercial success can repay. The gift becomes a transaction, and the artist is left empty. Add fame to sensitivity, and you get a funhouse mirror where the artist can't tell which reflection is real. At first, the reflection is intoxicating. It's you, but sharper, brighter, more interesting. But soon, the hall of mirrors multiplies. One reflection shows you as a genius, another as a fraud, one as a saint, another as a sellout. The sheer volume of these distorted images creates a deafening psychic noise. And the artist, who relies on a clear sense of self to create, begins to feel hopelessly lost in the echo chamber of their own public image. Strangers project their fantasies, lover, savior, villain, punchline, and after a while you lose track of your own face. Every fan, every critic, every casual observer holds up their own little shard of a mirror, reflecting back not who you are, but who they need you to be. You become a vessel for their hopes, a scapegoat for their fears, a symbol for a movement you never intended to lead. The real you, the person who just wanted to create something honest, gets buried under the weight of these collective projections. You start performing the role of yourself as defined by others, and the line between performance and reality begins to dissolve into a constant, low-grade anxiety. David Foster Wallace, who once said fiction was a way to be less alone, ended his life terrified of the version of himself that showed up in think pieces and late-night interviews. He built a career on dissecting the loneliness of modern life, on using fiction as a bridge between isolated minds. Yet, the more successful he became, the more isolated he felt. He told Rolling Stone that DFW felt like a cardboard cutout propped in front of the real, anxious guy who just wanted to write. The public persona, the bandana-wearing, polysyllabic intellectual giant, became a cage. He was trapped, forced to play the part of the oracle while privately drowning in the very anxieties he was famous for articulating. Or think of Kurt Cobain. He poured his pain and alienation into his music, creating a raw, authentic voice for a generation. But when that voice was amplified to a global scale, it was co-opted, commercialized, and misunderstood. The very system he raged against absorbed him and sold his rebellion back to the masses as a fashion statement. He wrote in his suicide note about the guilt he felt for pretending to enjoy the adoration of the crowds, unable to reciprocate the love from fans because the persona they loved felt like a lie. The disconnect between the authentic artist and the celebrated icon became an unbearable chasm. When the mirror cracks, two escape routes glow red: addiction and isolation. The strain of upholding a false self becomes too much. The psyche, bombarded by 1,000 conflicting images, finally fractures. And in that moment, it scrambles for an exit. These paths aren't choices made in a vacuum. They are desperate attempts to manage an unmanageable psychic pain. One is an attempt to numb the self, the other to protect it. Hemingway drank to dull the feedback. The titan of American literature became a prisoner of his own myth. The Papa persona, the hard-drinking, bullfighting man of action, demanded constant performance. He drank, in part, to dull the immense pressure of living up to that caricature, to quiet the feedback loop of public expectation. The alcohol blurred the line between the man and the myth, but it was a temporary and ultimately destructive anesthetic. Prince locked the doors at Paisley Park and refused to read reviews. He chose radical isolation, building his studio not just as a creative space, but as a fortress. By shutting out the world, refusing interviews, and controlling his output with an iron fist, he attempted to create a hermetically sealed reality, a space where the only reflection he had to face was his own. He walled himself off from the world to preserve the core of his creative genius, safe from the distorting gaze of the public. Neither works forever. Both just postpone the same reckoning. If everyone cheers for a version of you that isn't you, the cheering itself starts to sound like mockery. Addiction corrodes the very sensitivity that fuels the art. Isolation starves the artist of the human connection they crave. Both are just ways to postpone the inevitable. The applause becomes a constant, roaring reminder of the gap between your inner self and your outer image. The sound of success starts to sound like a celebration of your own disappearance. The ultimate paradox for the sensitive artist is that the act of being seen can make them feel utterly invisible. Here's the part nobody says out loud. Society loves the story more than the storyteller. Once the artist dies, the same machine that chased them prints t-shirts and remasters the catalog. The public mourns, the label profits, the algorithm serves up lost demos every anniversary. The sensitivity that once wrote the hits is now a marketable tragedy, shrink-wrapped and shipped. But the living artist watches this circus and learns the wrong lesson. Suffering pays. Shares rise when you bleed. Some stop trying to heal, some even crank the pain to 11. We call it the tortured artist cliché, but it's really a rational response to a crazy economy. If hurt sells, why risk getting better? The punchline: recovery stories rarely trend with the same fire reserved for martyrs. None of this means creative people are doomed. It means the scoreboard is busted. We tally success in streams, sales, statues, but we rarely ask, did the artist sleep last night? Do they recognize their voice on the playback? Can they change direction without being called a sellout? A quiet rebellion is rewriting the rules. Independent platforms let a songwriter drop a lullaby instead of a banger without nuking their career. Patrons fund painters to make weird, unsellable canvases. Therapy, actual therapy, has lost its stigma among younger artists who watched their heroes drown. These fixes don't make headlines, but they keep people alive long enough for the next project to matter. So next time you catch yourself envying someone on stage, ask the harder question. What would this level of exposure cost the part of me that still feels joy in small, quiet rooms? That part that finds satisfaction in the process, not just the applause. Because when the stage lights get brighter, they cast long shadows. The public eye is relentless. It can turn your private sanctuary, the very place where ideas are born, into a glass house. Suddenly, every choice is scrutinized, and the quiet joy of making something for yourself is replaced by the deafening roar of expectation. Anonymity vanishes. You become a brand, and it's a daily battle to remember the person you were before the world told you who you should be. This is why creative success isn't a golden ticket. It's a stress test for the soul. It's a crucible that tests your values, your relationships, and your identity. It asks, will you bend to the algorithm or stay true to your voice? Will you sacrifice well-being for a deadline or honor your own limits? The pressure doesn't just come from the outside, it amplifies every internal doubt. The fear of not being good enough is suddenly compounded by the fear of letting millions down. It's a profound, isolating weight. If we're going to keep celebrating genius, maybe we can also start protecting the fragile wiring that produces it. This means evolving from passive consumers to compassionate supporters, and dismantling the idea that artists are inexhaustible content fountains. The art that moves us often comes from profound vulnerability, because the song on repeat might have been written on the worst night of someone's life. The painting in a gallery might be the manifestation of a silent struggle, and the least we can do is not demand an encore while they're still trying to survive it. An encore in the digital age is hounding them for the next project, criticizing a shift in style and forgetting the human being behind the screen who needs rest, grace, and space. So, how do we build a creative life that can withstand this? As creators, how do we fortify ourselves? It starts by designing a version of success that sustains. First, define what success means to. Separate from metrics like likes or sales. Is it creative freedom, a healthy work-life balance? Make that your North Star. Second, build a fortress of genuine support. This isn't your fan base, this is your inner circle. Friends, a therapist, fellow creators who understand. And third, set and enforce non-negotiable boundaries. Your time, energy, and mental peace are your most valuable creative assets. Protect them. This brings us to a critical question. Drop a comment. What is one boundary you would set, or have already set, to protect your creative spirit? Your strategy could be the lifeline someone else needs. Let's trade notes and sketch a version of success that doesn't destroy the people who earn it. A version where rest is as celebrated as the hustle, and mental health is part of the process. Let's build a community that champions not just the art, but the artist's well-being. If this resonated, share it with a creator in your life. And if this one hit home, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're committed to peeling back the curtain on the creative life and having the uncomfortable, necessary conversations about the things we idolize. By understanding the true cost of creation, we can learn to value it and its creators more deeply.